Well, everybody, welcome back to the great state of Montana. This is the Carbine Cowboy. Hey, I just thought I'd do another vid as I was driving through town in the wife's car. We're heading up, well, kind of sort of heading towards uptown. The wife said it was too cold to cook, so she sent me out to buy dinner. It's not like she's got to go outside and cook it over an open fire, but hey, it works for me because then I get to go buy what I want. So, here I go. Anyway, we're heading up Continental Drive here. I gotta head over that way to go get my dinner. And we're gonna be driving by the Berkeley Pit. The pit here was shut down early 80s. It was the largest copper producing mine in the world. Your copper kings all owned gallows frames mines and stuff like that, jerking copper and gold and silver and platinum and all out of here. And they were doing really well. But, you know, it all came to an end about 1980, 81, somewhere around there. And this that you see that I'm coming up on, this is the pit. Now this pit is deep. It's about a mile deep. And they were digging holes in the ground here from about the 1860s all the way up till the 1980s. They say that there's enough underground tunnels from the mining up here that if you were to lay them end to end, you could go around the world 10 times. That's a lot of holes. But they were all Irish, Cornish, Scottish, people from every part of the world when these old hard rock miners would dig these holes by hand. I mean, could you imagine digging all that by hand? They were some pretty tough old boys. You know, it kind of got me to thinking, you know, back in the day, back around the turn of the century in Butte, if you wanted to be a cop, you didn't have to go to no school to be a cop back in the day. Not in good old Butte, Montana. What they would do is wait until there was a bar fight, and that was like every 5 minutes. And the way that you got to be a cop was two other seasoned deputies, because we have county sheriff's deputies, we don't have city police. They would take you up to a bar where there was a big bar fight going. And they would say, drag 3 men out here. And if you can drag 3 men out, you can be a cop. Well, they didn't say if they had to be breathing, and they didn't say if it had to be under their own power. So however you could drag 3 men out of that bar in the middle of a bar fight, more power to you. Oh, and I forgot to add one little ditty. This town wasn't actually one town. It was like 5 separate towns that all grew together. Most of them don't exist anymore. But they were very racist back then. Certain parts of it were all Irish, other parts were Scottish, some were German, some were, you know, every nationality you can think of, and they all kind of lived in their own little segregated communities. So could you imagine being an Irishman and being sent into a, I don't know, let's say a German bar, and the Germans didn't like the Irish, and you walk in there and say, you know, I'm a cop. Back in those days, you had a couple of 100 boys in that bar and they were all getting drunk and they're all about as tough as a crowbar. I think you might have a little bit of a problem. But that was the way they did it back in the day. Oh, and by the way, one other little tidbit. Al Capone showed up here back during Prohibition, and he wanted to start a bootlegging operation here in good old Butte, Montana. True story. The county sheriff at the time came up to him, told him to get the hell out of Butte, Montana, because the cops then were all on the take, you know. And the way the story goes is Al Capone goes, well, do you know who I am? I'm Al Capone from Chicago. Chief of police looked at him, and his exact words were, I don't give a damn who you are. This is Butte, Montana, not Chicago. Get your fat Irish wop ass out of my town. Quote, unquote. That's exactly what he said. Al Capone stuck his tail between his legs, went back to Chicago, never started a bootlegging operation in Butte. Now, why, you ask, would he want to start one in Butte, Montana? There was well over 100,000 people in this town back around the turn of the century. They were all union miners. They were all drawing, at that time, very good union pay. And of course, being Irish and German and all that, they loved their alcohol, even during Prohibition, and they were willing to pay whatever they had to pay to get it. So now you stop and think about that. That's why old Al Capone wanted an operation here. He wanted a cut of the pie. Well, he found out that the good old boys here, unlike Chicago, weren't going to put up with his crap. Well, I'm going to stop the video because I got to go get my dinner. I'll get right back to you just a second. Okay, guys, I got my dinner. Now I'm back. Now, let me tell you another little interesting history lesson about good old Butte, Montana. For those of you that have ever heard of the man by the name of Frank Little, he was a union organizer for the mines back about 1917. And he came here to good old Butte to help organize a bunch of miners for a labor strike. Well, he was in uptown Butte, where I'm going to go get some pictures for you later. And he was staying at a motel up there, hotel. And the Copper Kings didn't like the idea of him being around. So they hired a bunch of thugs. And they went upstairs, drugged Frank Little, right in daylight, out of that motel, drug him down the stairs, drug him right out to the middle of the road, the main road up there, tied him behind a horse and buggy, and literally drug him 5 miles down the road, and they hung him from the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad trestle, which I will get a picture of you when I get out that way. That's going out towards my house. And they got him buried here in the cemetery. Now, I find it kind of ironic that a man in broad daylight, and as well known as Frank Little was drugged in broad daylight down the middle of a street where there's over 100,000 people. And when the cops started asking questions, nobody saw a thing. Kind of funny, huh? But then again, you got to remember, this was a mining town. Everything was owned by the Copper Kings, and there were 3 of them. Daly and Clark and Heinze. Those were 3 of the richest men in the world at that time. They made Bill Gates look poor. And they drug him out. Wasn't bad enough they drug him down the road to kill him. But then they also turned around and hung him too after he was already dead, which is kind of an insult. But just thought I'd give you that little tidbit. I'll be back with you in a minute. Okay, guys, I had to stop by my dad's place. Yeah, you know, ever since my mom passed away, you know, I stop by and check on him every once in a while, along with my sister. And plus, we have to give him a shot. He's diabetic, so I do that on my days off to give my sister a break. What a nice brother I am. But anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah. Well, for those of you that may not know, I don't know if I've told a lot of you, but yes, I was a Fed, but I also have a college degree, and it's in the archaeology field. So yes, I'm college educated, overeducated and underpaid. Yep. No, when I was a kid, I wanted to be like Indiana Jones. You know, I was a real history nut. Wanted to be a battlefield archaeologist. Well, somebody didn't bother to tell me that by the time I got old enough to do all that, all the good stuff would be found. And it was. But anyway, that's why I'm such a history nut. And that's why I do a lot of what I do. You know, I'm a big history nut. My wife, you know, hated history when she was in high school. And what she does, she marries a guy that she calls a walking history book. So when they say that opposites attract, yeah, in my case, that's true. But anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, I was talking about Frank Little. The other thing is, you know, this town is really different. We've had a lot of people here. Back in the day, a lot of people would come to Butte. Movie stars like Clark Gable, Rita Hayworth, all of them, a lot of your big time movie stars back in the day. Because gambling is legal here. There is a casino on every street corner. I think I'm not sure how to put it. I don't know if there's more bars or more casinos, or they're having a race to see which one can have the most. I don't know. But let me tell you a little, speaking about bars, let me tell you a little bit of history here. I told you about the three Copper Kings, Heinze, Clark, and Daly. Well, let me tell you what they used to do. All three of them owned most all these mines here in Butte. And them guys were multi-billionaires, even by their standards back then. But what they do, this is funny, these mines ran 24/7, right? And at the end of every shift, they'd have a powder monkey. Now, for those of you that don't know what a powder monkey is, they're a dynamite expert, blasting expert. And what they'd do is they'd have the guys get off work. They'd have a powder monkey standing there, and he'd hand each guy a stick of dynamite as he was walking out of the gate. And what he'd tell them is on your way home, when you pass by one of our competitors, so meaning if you worked for Clark, anything that belonged to Daly or Heinze, and they own damn near everything in this town, the bars, the prostitutes, the stores that they shopped at. But anyway, they tell them when you pass by one of them, light a stick of dynamite and chuck it into business and blow it to hell and gone, because they were all fighting over which one of those Copper Kings was going to control this town. Now that is a historical fact. The other historical fact is General Dwight D. Eisenhower. You know, the guy that was the Allied commander of all troops during World War II. Well, he was stationed here in Butte back in the 30s, right before the World War II. And do you know that there were military troops stationed in Butte, Montana, longer than there was in the South at the end of the Civil War? Yep, that is a historical fact. We had martial law declared in this town for 25 years because of those three copper magnates deciding they wanted to either blow up, shoot up, or kill off the competition, no other politer way of putting it, and they did just that. Clark ended up becoming a United States Senator. Imagine that. Daly went on to, you know, running in politics too. And old Heinze, the German, if memory serves, during the stock market crash, he was uptown in Uptown Butte, pulled a pistol, put it in his mouth, pulled the trigger, and blew his brains out all over Park Street. He went from having a net worth of over $300 million in 1929 to having absolutely nothing when the stock market crashed. I mean, can you imagine one day sitting on $300 million and within a time span of 24 hours have absolutely nothing? I mean, he didn't have two nickels to rub together, and he put a pistol in his mouth, pulled the trigger, and that was the end of it. But that's, you know, kind of the story of Butte. You know, back in the day, it was a rough and tumble town. I ain't kidding you. The fighting, the drinking, the killing. There was a lot of killing in this town, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know if it would have paid to be a cop in Butte, Montana back in the day. You know, if the cops weren't crooked meaning being owned by one of the Copper Kings or having money put in their pocket by one of the Copper Kings. They were getting shot at, beat up, and blown up just like everybody else. Because see, the way it worked in those days here, if you worked for the brand, you rode for the brand. That's just all there was to it. If Clark was putting money in your pocket, you did whatever he said. If Daly was putting money in your pocket, you did whatever he said. If Heinze was doing it, you did what he said. That's just all there was to it. I mean, you know, they owned everything and pretty much everybody in this town. And that's just the way it was.